Welcome to Who Knows. An American student disappeared while on vacation with his friends in Mexico. At the time, it was a major case, and the police kept searching for the killer of this student, Mark Kilroy. Eventually, they managed to track down the killer's house. But the shocking part wasn't just finding Mark's disfigured, mutilated body. They also discovered a large cauldron filled with body parts from more than 14 other victims. This story is a mix of every type of crime you've ever heard of, and even ones you haven't. In 1962, Adolfo Constanzo was born in Miami, USA. His mother was only 15 years old at the time. After his father's death, she remarried twice, and in her last marriage, she inherited a large sum of money from her husband, allowing her and her son to live comfortably. However, despite their wealth, Constanzo was completely detached from education. But his education was of a different kind. He regularly accompanied his mother to church because she appeared to be deeply religious, or at least that's what she tried to show. However, despite their family's apparent devotion to the church, the neighbors always noticed strange things about their behavior. The smell around their house was often terrible, and rumors began to spread that Constanzo's mother practiced black magic. These rumors became more believable when people who had conflicts with her would find decapitated chickens or dead animals in front of their door the next day. The truth is, the neighbors' suspicions were spot on. Constanzo's mother was indeed practicing magic because she believed in the Santeria faith, which involves magic and supernatural abilities of spirits. Santeria is a mix of Catholic rituals and African beliefs, similar to voodoo, known for its black magic practices. This was the foundation of Constanzo's education in magic, which he began learning as early as 5 years old. By the time he was 14, his interests had shifted to a faith called Palo, closely related to Santeria, but much more violent in its methods of communicating with spirits. Followers of Palo believe that anyone who doesn't follow their faith should die. Constanzo's godfather during this time was a very wealthy man, due to his involvement in the drug trade, and his philosophy, which he taught Constanzo, was to get non-believers to kill themselves using drugs. This way, they could rid the world of them, while also profiting from their stupidity. According to his godfather, this was the ultimate revenge. Constanzo adopted this philosophy and applied it throughout his life. From then on, his life took a complete turn. After practicing only the magic his mother taught him, he began following a much more violent path, encouraged by his newfound faith. Constanzo was arrested twice in the U.S. for theft, among other charges, and had a violent nature. In 1983, Constanzo traveled to Mexico, where he formed a gang of thugs whom he convinced to follow his beliefs. Soon his fame grew in Mexico as a powerful sorcerer who could predict the future by reading tarot cards and break curses using magic spells. He gained a massive following among poor farmers who believed in his supernatural abilities. Even notorious gang members began seeking his services to cast spells that would protect them from the police, weapons, and bullets. One mafia leader at the time paid Constanzo $40,000 to cast a spell that would protect him and his gang for 3 years. Unfortunately, the spread of ignorance, superstition, and crime in Mexico during that period increased Constanzo's influence even further. Despite his unlimited wealth and widespread fame, Constanzo wasn't satisfied. He began trafficking drugs on top of practicing magic and became more involved with major drug cartels. Then, one day, everything changed. Constanzo's madness escalated to the point where he went from theft, drugs, and magic to murder, most of the time killing just for the sake of it. In 1986, Constanzo became involved with a criminal family named Calzada, one of Mexico's largest crime syndicates. He provided them with all his usual magical services. However, despite the money he made from them, his greed grew. Constanzo believed that the Calzada family's success was entirely due to his magical spells. In 1987, he demanded a share of their profits, but they responded harshly, kicking him out. He left angry with only one thought on his mind: revenge. Soon after, 6 members of the Calzada family, including the gang leader, went missing. Their bodies, or what was left of them, were found floating in the river. Constanzo and his gang had kidnapped the Calzada members, tortured them in the most brutal ways, gouged out their eyes, extracted the brains of 2 members, and took many other body parts. These were placed in a cauldron called the Nganga, which was part of Constanzo's rituals. Typically, it was meant to hold animal sacrifices, or sometimes human bones stolen from graves. But Constanzo reserved his cauldron for human sacrifices only, and the primary supplier of body parts was the Calzada family. This marked the beginning of a series of horrific and uncontrollable crimes. In 1987, Constanzo met Sara Aldred, a beautiful and highly educated college student. She became deeply attached to Constanzo, and despite her intelligence and education, she was easily convinced to follow his violent practices and beliefs. Soon, Sara became Constanzo's personal assistant, enthusiastically participating in his crimes and tortures. Constanzo's victim count increased significantly. To maintain their secrecy, he moved his gang to a remote ranch far from the city. His madness grew to the point where he would scream at his gang members to bring him any victim to sacrifice. If they couldn't find someone, he would even kill his own gang members. Sara also became like him, to the point where she killed her ex-boyfriend in a moment of insanity, just to satisfy her own twisted desires. Within months, Constanzo, Sara, and the rest of the gang turned the new ranch into a literal slaughterhouse, without anyone noticing. This was partly due to the corruption that plagued the Mexican police, who were heavily influenced by drug cartels, so there were no serious investigations into the missing people. But everything changed in 1989. Constanzo was planning to smuggle a large shipment of drugs into the US, and as usual, he wanted to perform a spell to ensure the operation's success. This time, he requested a special sacrifice: a young white American male. This was the mistake that led to his downfall, because the victim they chose was Mark Kilroy, the American student we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, and Constanzo's last victim. Mark's disappearance and murder did not go unnoticed like the others, mainly because of his American citizenship, which caused a massive uproar in Mexico. The police had no choice but to investigate the matter and find the culprits. They uncovered many clues that eventually led them to Constanzo's ranch. When they raided the place, they were horrified by what they found. The first thing they noticed was the unbearable smell, which led them to the Nganga cauldron. Inside were human brains, bones, and body parts, along with other disturbing objects like black cats' corpses, tortoise shells, spiders, and scorpions, all used in black magic rituals. They also found a mass grave where Constanzo had buried the remains of his victims, including Mark Kilroy and more than 16 others, 2 of whom were police officers. When the police raided the ranch, Constanzo had already escaped with Sara and the remaining gang members. However, the police tracked them down to their new hideout. Rather than surrender, Constanzo engaged in a shootout with the police until he ran out of ammunition. In the end, Constanzo ordered one of his gang members to kill him before the police could capture him because he knew what awaited him for his crimes. Constanzo was shot dead, and the rest of the gang members were arrested. Sarah was sentenced to 62 years in prison, but she only served 10 before committing suicide in her cell. Constanzo was responsible for the deaths of 23 people, and investigators believe there are dozens more victims who suffered the same gruesome fate. To this day, Adolfo Constanzo is considered one of the world's most dangerous criminals, with crimes more horrifying than anything you'd see in horror films. Don't forget to hit the notification bell and subscribe.